Hello, everyone. My name is Raquel Sabater, and I am a school psychology doctoral trainee at Nova Southeastern University. And today I will be speaking to you all about training school psychologists to become more culturally responsive and culturally humble. So, when we look at the data, we see that 1 in 5 youth will experience some form of mental health impairment throughout their development. However, only about half of those children will actually access and receive services of some kind. And that disparity is extremely concerning. But when we look at it at a breakdown level and we break it down by ethnicity and race, we see that the disparity is even greater. White students are about 50% likely to receive services and access those services when they need them, but only about 50%, or I'm sorry, only about less than 30% of Black, Hispanic, and Asian students will access those services when they need them. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this the case? And a big reason is the barriers that come with a lack of diversity in school psychology and psychology in general, as well as a lack of cultural responsiveness. When we look at the breakdown of ethnicity and demographics of school psychologists, we see that there is a very large underrepresentation of Black, Hispanic, and Asian school psychologists, especially compared to the US population. When we ask clients how they feel about stigmas around mental health services, accessing mental health services, and what they feel are barriers to accessing those services. Research shows that clients feel like cultural responsiveness and a lack of that is a big reason why they do not access services. Clients tend to feel like clinicians that have a different communication style than them or a different cultural background come off as cold or disengaged. They may also feel like clinicians are coming from a different religious, ritualistic, or even family value perspective. So the client's own values, rituals, and beliefs are different from the clinician. And in that lack of understanding between them tends to make the client feel like they are being misheard or even disrespected or devalued based on their own cultural perspectives that are different than the clinician. And lastly, clinicians sometimes come off as experts. And we want that to be the case. We want clinicians to be seen as experts. However, when they come off as we are the experts on everything, it can make the client feel like their own unique perspectives, their own unique life experiences, which they are the experts of, are being devalued and they're almost being looked down upon. And that can be very discouraging for a client. And so we have to think about how can we become more culturally humble. And when we look at the cultural humility model, we see that there are three large components. And the first thing is self reflection, making sure that you're recognizing your own bias and how that impacts your ability to interact with others, especially clients. The second thing is being a lifelong learner, consistently reading, looking at research, understanding best practices, and being flexible with implementing those best practices, even if something that's you're different than what you're used to. And lastly, is creating a collaborative partnership, especially if you're a school psychologist, with families and students and parents to make sure that they are seen as the expert on their child and their own unique cultural and life experiences. And you are the expert on psychology, and together you all create a team. So we need to pull all of these things together. And a great way to do that is training students to do that within schools. And research shows that providing these kinds of cultural humility and diversity trainings within school psychology during graduate school provides better outcomes for these students. They are more likely to be aware of oppression. They are more likely to want to stand up for social justice. They are more likely to recognize their own biases. However, only about 76% of all psychology programs offer some kind of diversity course. And only about 84% of school psychology doctoral programs require students to take diversity courses if they are offered. And those may sound like high numbers, but we know that it's necessary to incorporate diversity and cultural responsiveness. So the fact that there are some schools that still aren't doing that leaves the question why? Because we know that they're effective and that they're helpful for clinicians working with all kinds of clients, regardless of their backgrounds. So there's a lot of barriers. Some of them might be a lack of diversity in the faculty and the people who are making the decisions. Some might be a lack of diversity in the student population in that school. Some might also be the resources that are being used. A lot of psychologists that first started creating psychology and doing this exploration were white men. And so we're coming from that perspective, and then we're seeing other groups as the other. So we have to recognize that some of our textbooks are not necessarily the most accurate. So, what can we do about it? How can we use this research to make sure that we are providing the most effective, most beneficial, best practice related services, training programs for our students so that when they graduate, they are able to become more effective clinicians? Well, the first thing that you can do is hire diverse faculty, recruit diverse students, especially faculty that is very passionate about social justice. Secondly, make sure that you're evaluating the textbooks that you're using. Who's writing these textbooks? What do the textbooks say about the majority culture versus the minority culture? What do they say about what's considered culturally normal and acceptable versus what's considered abnormal? And how might that reflect what's considered culturally normal in the society? And is that actually acceptable and being inclusive? The next thing that you can do is provide more than one diversity class. Allow students to engage on diversity on multiple levels: sex, gender, socioeconomic status, physical exceptionalities. All of those things are really important. In addition, provide training for faculty and continuously evaluate if that training is effective at making faculty more comfortable in talking about cultural humility and those tough conversations that come along with diversity and culture. And lastly, provide a variety of practicum experiences that allow students to interact with people from diverse backgrounds so that they're able to really implement what they're learning in the classroom out in the field and in person practically. When we do these kinds of things, when we implement these cultural humility factors as if they were basic skills, just like consultation or basic counseling skills, we find that students have better outcomes and they are better able to serve their students when they become school psychologists themselves. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Bye bye.